Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. Between the OTC, New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ, there are over 22,000 companies traded publicly. I feel that small businesses are the backbone of America. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest. CEO Amit Kumar from Anixa Biosciences, Inc., which is developing therapies and vaccines that are focused on critical unmet needs in oncology. Anixa's programs are using the body's immune system to take multiple approaches in fighting cancer. CAR T-cell therapy to treat cancer and vaccines to prevent cancer. But I'll let Amit tell you more about that in just a minute. It's important to understand that I do not collect compensation for the interviews I do here. The purpose of this channel is to find companies that have identified big problems and have found solutions to those problems. There's a thing called impact investing. It's tied to environmental, social, and governance. There are a lot of companies out there attacking very big problems, and I believe that you and I can help them in more ways than one. By helping a small company become a large corporation, if you and I can become ambassadors of a product because the values of that company align with our own, think of all the jobs that will be created as that small company becomes a big company. Think about the community that that company is in. Typically, they thrive along with the company. This channel is to help companies that are relatively unknown become known so that they can build a following and they can have brand ambassadors that share their vision, share their mission, and are willing to do what they can to help have a positive impact on humanity. That's what this channel is all about. Please join me on this journey to have a positive impact on humanity. Together, we can make a difference. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, you speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a brand new company that is very exciting. And I know many of you will be a little shocked that I'm meeting with a biotech company, because I've stated more than once that biotech companies are absolutely necessary. However, early stages, they are typically cash burning machines and can be a very painful long hold. So, but this one has me. There's two things that are happening here. One, the efficacy of the drugs that they have in the pipeline is incredibly exciting. The disease that they are targeting, which is a big one, and the other thing that's really impressed the hell out of me is the CEO, Amit Kumar. Amit, I want to thank you for coming in and telling your story. If you could. The company is Anixa Biosciences, and the ticker symbol is ANIX, traded on the NASDAQ. Amit, can you give us a quick rundown on your background and how you got here?
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, Tim. And so to answer your question, my background, I'm a trained scientist. I was educated at Stanford University, got my PhD at Caltech, and then finished up my postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard, and then came back to the West Coast because the East Coast was a little bit too cold for me, and have been working in the biotech industry since that time. And a few years ago, I was sort of thinking about retiring and having done a number of different things in the biotech sector, and was either going to retire or come back. And a little company that was having some challenges, which is now Anixa. At that time, it was called something else, was having some challenges. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. One of my friends was on the board there. They asked me to take a look at it, and I decided to come off the sideline and get involved, and took the CEO role at this company, and that was in 2017, and 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago. And I repositioned that company. It had previously been an electronics company and in a number of different areas, and had been very unsuccessful over the years. In 2017, I took over, repositioned it, brought in a new board and new management, and turned it into a biotech company. But to your point, I wanted to do this biotech company different from previous biotech companies that many of you are familiar with, but also that I'm familiar with. I wanted to focus on big diseases and focus on a business model that would enable us to develop our technologies without burning a massive amount of cash. And so if you look back at the history of the company since 2017, you'll note that we've been burning on average about $5 to $6 million a year. And that includes all of the costs associated with doing our R&D, our clinical trials, as well as all the costs associated with being public, the legal costs, accounting costs, auditing costs, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've been operating on a very frugal budget, yet moving all of our programs forward. And we have 2 programs right now in clinic, meaning human testing, and they're both going very well. One is for breast cancer and one is for ovarian cancer, 2 very, very big diseases that have clear unmet medical needs.
So well, I mean, you've had exciting news for both of them, right? So you're getting ready to start the phase 2 for the breast cancer, correct?
That's correct. We're nearly complete with the phase 1, and we've started planning the phase 2, and that'll begin sometime next year in 2025. And we're very excited based on the data that we have seen in the phase 1 study.
So so that data still hasn't come out yet from the completion of the phase 1?
We have presented partial phase 1 data, and that was presented last year at a major scientific conference in December of 2023, and that data looks spectacular. And now we're going to be presenting additional data in November, also at a major conference, first week of November. And I anticipate that I already know what the data is, but I anticipate that data will be looking very promising as well. And we are going to, based on all of that information, we're going to begin planning, or we are planning the phase 2 study, which will begin next year.
So the phase 1 is it what type of trial or testing was it? How big of a?
Yeah, so it was a small number of patients. So far, we've tested it on 27 patients.
Okay.
Now, a little bit of context about this product. It's a vaccine, and in the world of cancer.
Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about a new app that I am very excited about. If you want to up your investing game with Wall Street wisdom, stay informed, save time, and gain an edge, then you're going to want to check out this app, STOCKPICK. You can discover pro tips from top investors and expert curated financial news, all in quick video short form clips. I've been using this app and I got to tell you, I love it. I am extremely impressed with the quality of the content. It keeps me informed, and I have to tell you, I've used all kinds of comparable services out there. This one is priced at $79 US. It is a steal of a deal. And right now, on top of that, you can get an additional 25% off. I'm telling you, folks, I think you're going to love this app. Go to the description of this video and find the link. Make sure you use my code to get that 25% off.
There are two types of vaccines. There's the prophylactic vaccine, and then there's therapeutic vaccine. So a prophylactic vaccine is designed to prevent cancer. So the idea here is we would give women who don't have cancer at the time, breast cancer at the time, a series of shots and vaccinate them so that their immune system is trained to destroy cancer cells, breast cancer cells, as they arise. And in the therapeutic arena, the vaccine is used to induce the immune system to help destroy an active cancer that already exists in the woman. And so our vaccine, we believe, is going to be successful as both a prophylactic and a therapeutic. One day, if it's successful as a prophylactic and prevents breast cancer, then potentially, and this will be years from now when we've done the appropriate trials, this vaccine could be given to virtually every woman in the world that's worried about breast cancer. But that's a ways away. Near term, we're going to do a phase 2 study that's going to treat women in the neoadjuvant setting. What that means is women who have been diagnosed with cancer before they've had their breast cancer surgeries. And so the intent is to treat those women, induce their immune systems to try and battle the cancer before they do their surgeries, with the goal of perhaps enabling the surgeon to do a much less aggressive surgery, and then successive to the surgery, enabling a much longer progression-free survival. So meaning the cancer does not come back for a much longer time than if you hadn't given them the vaccine ahead of time. And so that's what we're doing. But the long-term vision for this vaccine is to be able to give it to all women who've never had breast cancer and prevent breast cancer in the future. And so the phase 1 data was structured in a way that the data we would get would enable us to go into successive clinical trials for both the prevention and the therapeutic modality. And we are going to first go into the therapeutic modality in 2025.
So is this a drug, a molecule? What is this?
Yeah, it's a molecule. It's a protein that is combined with some other molecules, something called an adjuvant, which is something that helps induce immune response. And we put it all together and we inject it into the patient. We give them 3 injections over a 1-month period. And then we monitor their immune systems to see if we've taught their immune systems to target the cancer. And the way we target the cancer, and let me take a step back for a second. The way this vaccine works is we've identified a protein, which we call a retired protein. What that means is that that protein is necessary at a certain time in life for a woman. And when that time in life and that function is no longer needed, that protein disappears. So in the case of breast cancer, we all know that when women get pregnant, lots of changes occur in their body. One of the changes that occurs as they give birth is that a protein called alpha-lactalbumin, the name is not important right now, but it's a lactation protein. What it does is it gets produced in the breasts of women who have given birth, and it enables the production of milk so that the woman can lactate, so she can feed her infant. But when she stops breastfeeding after a few months or a year or so, the protein disappears. It's not needed anymore. It retires. And then if she has another child, it comes back again. If she has another child, it comes back again. Eventually, after she's no longer going to have children, it disappears and is completely retired. And in most women, never comes back. But in the 1 out of 8 women where breast cancer arises, breast cancer cells are making that protein. So the idea here is if we could vaccinate women after they're no longer going to have children and teach their immune systems, their white blood cells essentially, to destroy any cell making that retired protein, then when cancer cells arise and they're making that retired protein, the immune system is ready and able and will destroy those cells. So those few cells at the early stage, 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, they never have a chance to continue reproducing and becoming a tumor. So that's the idea. Now, in the therapeutic setting, the concept is very similar In that case, the cancer is already there, but what we are doing is we're giving them the vaccine and inducing their immune system, their white blood cells, and teaching them to learn to attack that cancer, attack that protein, which is being made by the cancer. So now a tumor that may be X in a certain size might get reduced to a lower size before she has surgery. So now you don't have to do as aggressive a surgery. And because you may have killed many of the microtumors that may exist that you can't see using surgery, during a surgery, and those microtumors can cause a recurrence after surgical resection. The idea is if we can destroy those microtumors with the vaccine, then chances are good that after surgery, the woman is not going to have a recurrence. So this vaccine could be an amazing product, not only for treating women who already have cancer, but eventually preventing cancer in women who don't have cancer. So it's incredibly exciting. The data is really good. And those of you who are familiar with the vaccine space in cancer will know that we've been incredibly unsuccessful, despite the fact that we've been incredibly successful with vaccines against infectious diseases like polio and smallpox, measles, et cetera, et cetera. We've never had a cancer vaccine being successful. And the reason we think that is because the molecular mechanism that people have used in the past has been flawed. And I won't get into the detailed science and get into the weeds on that, but the point is our molecular mechanism, which targets these retarded proteins, in the case of breast cancer, this lactation protein, we think is going to enable this to work. And the data that we've seen is incredibly promising so far.
Which is incredibly exciting. But you're going after one of the biggest cancers out there, right? Breast cancer, lung is the other, right?
Yes.
But could this vaccine be used for other cancer types?
That's right. Not this exact vaccine, but a similar type of vaccine. And we actually have another one that we're developing along with our partner at the Cleveland Clinic that is focused on preventing ovarian cancer. And we've just started programs to begin studying lung cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer. And so, those are sort of the four big cancers. And we're pretty excited of, four big cancers and ovarian cancer. So we're very excited about it. The excitement stems from the data that we've seen in humans on the breast cancer vaccine. All of the other stuff is still at the laboratory and animal stage, but the breast cancer vaccine is at the human stage. And the really wonderful thing about this vaccine is that our partner, where it was invented, the Cleveland Clinic, is where the clinical trial is going on. And the U.S. Department of Defense has given the Cleveland Clinic the money to fund this vaccine research. And so that's another piece of credibility that says that a major government agency is funding this.
I was blown away when you told me about the Department of Defense, and that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight is because of the way that you are able to fund the research. I had no idea that the DoD would be, looking to fund cancer research or a vaccine on cancer, right?
It's not
how that came about.
Yeah, it's not well known, Tim, but the DoD has a small line item in their budget. The DoD budget is massive, as I'm sure most of you know, and they focus most of their money, the bulk of their money, on defense-related things, paying our soldiers, fighting wars, etc. But there's a small line item, and it's small relative to the total DoD budget, but it's a sizable amount to fund revolutionary new medical research, cancer research. And so there's a program focused on breast cancer, and this was put in there by certain legislators years ago. And because when president signs these bills, the president doesn't have a line item veto. He's not going to be able to cross that out. And so this is in there, and it's been in there. And so the DoD has this program, and it's a very, very unique program. They have strong peer review. They send out any applications for grants to lots of outside experts who kick the tires and evaluate what gets to be funded. And my understanding is that they don't fund the next small iteration of something that already exists. They fund things that potentially could be game changing. And so they funded the Cleveland Clinic to work on this vaccine. And, you know, because it's game changing, potentially, again, this is a bold statement for me to make when we've only tested this on 27 patients, but one day, potentially, this could be a vaccine that could be given to every woman in the world and have an impact similar to vaccines in smallpox and polio and things like that. So that's game changing. Imagine if you could do that for a cancer, like you've done that for an infectious disease like smallpox, right?
Yeah, that would be unbelievable. I wanna go back to something you said though. You said that as long as she's done having children, does that mean that if you're thinking about having children at some point, you would not get this until
Yeah,
after?
that's a really good question, Tim, and very insightful, of course. And that is that, you know, there, so again, taking a step back, there are some women who get breast cancer in their 20s. They tend to be women who have these mutations that predispose them to certain, you know, to breast cancer and ovarian cancer, actually. But, you know, we're talking about breast cancer right now. And these women may want to take the vaccine in their 20s, and they may not have had children at that point. Now, in the animal studies that we did, we found that when we vaccinate an animal, a mouse, before the mouse has children, what we found is that the mouse was able to give birth normally. The litters and the pups were perfectly normal, but that mouse could not make milk because what happens is the vaccine has taught that mouse's immune system to destroy cells making that lactation protein. And the cells making that lactation protein are the cells in her breast that enable milk production. And so the mouse couldn't make milk. And so the pups would, while they were suckling against their mother's teat, couldn't get any milk. In humans, it's a little different because you could always feed a child with formula. And so if a woman gets this vaccine at an early stage, or even at a late stage, like she's 40 and she accidentally gets pregnant, or maybe intentionally gets pregnant, we anticipate that she'll be able to have the child, everything will be fine. She'll have some inflammation in her breast as her breast starts to, you know, get ready to make milk. And it's unlikely that she'll be able to make milk. So she'd have to feed the child with formula or, you know, milk from another mother.
There's not a big major deterrent there. I mean,
we don't think so. That's correct.
Okay. No, I think that's, you know, look, I mean, that's incredible, right? I mean, because I know, you know, breast cancer is one of those things where very traumatic thing. You got to go in, you got to, you know, get the mastectomy, and then, you know, you think you got it all. You have to go through that mental trauma, and you think you got it all, and then you find out, you know, 3 months later, well, we didn't get it all, and you got to go through that shit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, you know, we've become incredibly good at catching breast cancer early. We teach women to do self-exams. We teach them to go get regular mammographic screening. And they do that, and we tend to catch breast cancer early. But the treatment of breast cancer, where you have to go through the chemotherapy, the surgery, the post-surgery therapy, is brutal. It's brutal and it's expensive for our healthcare system. And then that woman, and this is not unique for breast cancer, this is for any cancer, that patient now wakes up every morning wondering if her cancer is going to come back. And certain breast cancers, like triple negative breast cancer, which is the most lethal form, the recurrence rates are anywhere from 40 to 80%. So a lot of these women are going to get breast cancer again. And when it comes back, it's usually metastatic and much more aggressive. And so then it becomes basically a battle to try and keep that woman alive for an extra few months or, you know, a year or so, and that's about it. So so we talk about the cure for cancer, and curing breast cancer, we've gotten pretty good at it, but the the process is brutal for the patient and
Yeah.
expensive for the healthcare system. But what's better than curing cancer? Not getting it in the first place, right?
Right.
So this vaccine can do that. That's better than getting, getting a cure, right?
That would be absolutely amazing. I mean, I do wonder, especially after this COVID thing, the anti-vaxxers, vaxxers. I mean, for me, look, I went and got the vax because it wasn't necessarily for me. It was for my 80-year-old mother, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if there was any chance that I was gonna be the one that passed it along to her, I mean, it would not have been a good thing. I wouldn't have been able to even live with that, right? So it's a very polarizing subject, I know, for people, but I think back to
Oh,
when I was a kid. I mean, I got all the vaccines when I was a kid before I could go to school, right?
yeah. So let me make a comment about that. And it's a good point. I mean, vaccines have become very political, polarizing, as you noted. I personally believe in vaccines, and in fact, vaccines have been one of the greatest medical innovations of all time. I believe, I'm not, don't hold me on this, but I believe throughout the history of mankind, smallpox has killed more people than any other infectious diseases. And the smallpox vaccine has essentially eliminated that disease from mankind. We see a few little outbreaks here and there, but it's very rare. And same with other things like polio and you can go down the list. Um, Now, the mandates, government mandates, whether they're mandates for preschool children before they can go to school, or recently the mandates that were handed down with regard to COVID. Those are all for infectious diseases, because the idea there is that you can get the disease, and even if you beat it, like you said, you could give it to someone else that may not be able to beat it, like your grandma. And so those mandates will never exist for cancer vaccines, because if you have breast cancer and you sit next to a person on a train who doesn't have, you're not going to give it to her. You hug someone, you're not going to give them breast cancer. So that type of vaccine will only be given to you if you want it. Now, if the data, we don't have the data yet, but once the data shows that it prevents breast cancer, I would think people would be fools not to take it, but it'll be their choice. It won't be, it won't
Right.
have an impact on society.
Right. And I would think that it would not be it would not be out of reach for people to afford to get. I would think the insurance companies would be more than happy to pay whatever it is for you to get that shot,
That's
right?
right. A woman who has breast cancer and goes through the full treatment and then has a recurrence, our healthcare system, if she's properly insured, will spend $2 to $3 million on that patient. We're hoping this vaccine will be.
And that's to buy them, maybe like, I mean, if they're in the second phase of its comeback, that's to buy them maybe a few months to
few
live.
months, a few months and a few months of very poor quality of life. So
Right.
wouldn't it be great if we could just give everyone a shot? I have two daughters. We have breast cancer in my family, and I'd love to be able to vaccinate both my daughters and not have them have to worry about breast cancer. And
Yeah.
everyone can say that about members of their family.
All right. So let's talk about the other drug.
Yeah, so the other drug is something called a CAR T therapy. And this is for treating advanced metastatic and essentially patients who have failed every other therapy in ovarian cancer. So as most of you know, ovarian cancer has a very poor outcome. We've gotten better and better a little bit because of supportive care, but in general, very, very poor outcome. Most women who have ovarian cancer get certain therapies, and that lasts for 6 to 12 months. Then the cancer becomes resistant. They try another thing and another thing. And usually you get 18 months of life, and then, next few months is a horrible horrible quality of life, and most women pass away. Part of the reason is because ovarian cancer is typically diagnosed once it's already spread to other parts of the body. And so the women that we are treating with this new therapy are women who have failed every other therapy. Most of these women are terminal. In fact, they are terminal. They have a few months, more or less, to live, and we're treating them with this therapy called CAR-T, chimeric antigen receptor T cell technology. It's a new type of immunotherapy. It's a very complex therapy, which involves taking white blood cells out of the patient's body, patient who has cancer, taking her white blood cells out, and then genetically engineering them in a laboratory, and then putting them back into the patient with the intent that the engineered cells will be better cancer fighters and can go and fight the cancer. Now, this type of therapy got a lot of people excited in the medical community as well as the investment community a few years ago, because it was able to save the lives of essentially terminal leukemia and lymphoma patients, people who had blood cancers. And so these are people who, like I said, only have a few months to live. And typically when any type of treatment in cancer for patients who have only a few months to live only gives them usually an extra few months at best. But in this case, CAR-T therapy was able to cure a lot of them, meaning eliminate the disease, and there was no residual disease in those patients. And many of those patients have lived for years. So it was revolutionary in the cancer space. And so it got a lot of people excited. The companies that were working on these therapies were being bought out for $10-12 billion even before their therapies made it to market. The problem was that after the early success in leukemia and lymphoma, and only certain types of leukemias and lymphomas, after that early success, the approach has not worked for any other type of cancer, especially solid tumors, which is a much bigger impact to the cancer population and obviously financially a much bigger market. So people have been trying to make CAR-T therapy work in solid tumors with no success to date. However, our CAR-T has some unique attributes that we have now shown that it's starting to have impact on certain patients' lives. We've only tested it on 6 patients so far, and several of them have lived much longer than expected. In fact, one patient has lived 18 months and is going strong. And in fact, we've verified that the therapy is knocking out portions of her tumor. Didn't knock out the whole tumor, but it knocked out a chunk of it. And so we went back to the FDA and filed what's known as an emergency IND, investigational new drug application, or single patient IND, I should say, where we've asked the FDA to give us permission to dose this patient again. And so we're going to be doing that again. She's 18 months out, and that by any standard, that's a win. Obviously for the patient, for us, we want her to live much, much longer than 18 months. And so we're thinking that, maybe giving her a second dose will knock out more of her tumor. She's doing really well, good performance. Everything is going a good quality of life for her. And we want that to continue. And we're starting to see some similar types of effects on other patients as well. Now, it's important to understand that when you develop therapies like these or perform clinical trials with therapies like these, you start out with very low concentrations, very low dosage. And so this patient got the lowest dose, a dose that we think is called a subtherapeutic dose. The intent is you start out with low dose to make sure it's safe. Then you go to a higher dose, make sure it's safe, you higher dose, make sure it's safe, and so forth. And we started out with this first group of 3 at the low dose level, and we weren't expecting any results. We were just looking for safety signals. But all of a sudden, this patient is doing incredibly well, even at this low dose. So we're thinking that as we go higher and higher and higher in dose, that we're going to have more and more patients perform incredibly well. And the reason the FDA gave us the go-ahead to give her a second dose is because we told the FDA, and FDA knows that she got such a low dose. And even with that low dose, she's responding. So her disease is stabilized. And so we asked them if we could give her another dose with the expectation that had she been later on in the trial, she would have gotten a higher dose and maybe would have had a bigger impact on her tumor, maybe even knocked it out completely. So this is the first time in the United States that I've heard of any CAR T therapy having an impact like this. Still early days because it's such a small number of patients, 6 patients so far. So there's no statistical relevance, but anecdotally, we're seeing some very, very positive things. And so we're incredibly excited about this therapy. And as we go forward with higher dosages, we anticipate seeing a lot of really good things.
To be clear, when she first came in, she was basically bedridden, right?
She to some degree, but she was okay, but she's better now. And frankly, she had failed every other therapy. Her tumor was progressing, meaning it was getting larger and larger. Now we've stopped that, and 18 months, and going 18 months so far, and going longer, and so that's a win by any standard.
I could be sitting here talking to the guy that him and his team got rid of cancer.
Well, the important word there is the team. I'm like the front man here, but there's a massive group of researchers and scientists and physicians working on this.
How many people working on it?
Working on it, and people who invented it. I've got to say it's got to be, including all the patient support. It's got to be 100 people. I mean, it's a massive, massive team.
But
there's some key people. Their principal investigator who's overseeing the whole trial. There's the inventor of the technology. There's our team and myself, and there's some key people, but there are a lot of other people, technicians and other scientists and doctors and nurses that have worked on this and will work on this, going forward.
I mean, I can't even imagine having the kind of results that would get you that excited, right? I mean, where you really think this could be literally, we give somebody a shot and they don't have any chance at risk of breast cancer. That
yeah
would be amazing, right? I mean,
that would be amazing. That's been a vision for researchers for decades. Ever since we started doing that type of thing with infectious diseases, people have been saying, why can't we do this with cancer? And we've not had any successes. But this technology that, the breast cancer vaccine, going back to the breast cancer vaccine, was invented by a brilliant immunologist at the Cleveland Clinic. He postulated this theory 20 years ago. And he's been working on it for those 2 decades. And I read his papers in 2018, which was about 1 year after I took over at this company. And I read this paper, and I read it. I read his research, and I said, this could be amazing. So I immediately got on a plane and took one of my advisors. And this advisor is a gentleman named Mike Shepard, who is an advisor to our company. And Mike Shepard has been a good friend of mine, and maybe people may not know that name because it's a scientific, he's a scientist and not a rock star, but like Taylor Swift. But he's a scientist, and he was the person who invented Herceptin, which is the very first and most successful breast cancer therapy for aggressive breast cancer. And so he was there in the early days of Genentech, where he invented that technology, and he's been an advisor to the company for a long time. So I called him and I said, Mike, take a look at these papers and tell me what you think. And he agreed with me. He thought that this could be amazing. So he and I got on a plane and went to Cleveland Clinic, sat down with the research team, all of the technicians, the scientists, physicians involved. And we said, this could be amazing. So in 2018, we got involved, and took a license to the technology and partnered with the Cleveland Clinic to take it from the laboratory, which is what it was at that time, into human testing. And we're now in human testing, and the data is looking incredibly promising. So part of it is luck. I happen to be reading those papers and which is what I do. I read, the scientific literature all the time. And part of it is I realize what it could be. And we got on a plane quickly and went over there and got.
I hear this and I think to myself, I mean, one of the things, and I told you about it when we first met, that, when I first got into investing, it was just all I cared about was making money. That was my primary goal, just make some additional cash. And then as I progressed and got older, I wanted to help people become better investors. And I would say I pretty much failed at that because most people don't want to really put in the work. I mean, they've got a full-time job, they've got a family, they got kids, they got a life. My whole life is researching companies. That's what I do. That's what I enjoy doing, right? I like reading boring stuff and interviewing management and getting to know, what drives them or what they're passionate about or how they got. I love all that stuff. That's exciting to me. I do that 7 days a week. Most people don't want to do that. Most people don't even want to, I start talking about companies and stocks and people's eyes start to glaze over because they just, they want to talk about something else. Just not
Taylor
stocks.
Swift. Yeah, no. But you know what, Tim, you bring up an interesting point. And I've been in the biotech world for a long time. And I'm a highly trained scientist and I can read research papers and things like that that other biotech companies are working on. And every CEO of any biotech company that you interview or you talk to, like me, is going to tell you they've got the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? No one's going to say, oh, my stuff is kind of so-so. They're all going to say, my stuff is great, right? Just like I am telling you. But how do you assess that statement? Well, you could, as you said, do what people don't like to do, which is a trained scientist like me. I could go read all of their literature and it takes a long time. And even then you don't really get a good feel for it. But there are certain things, characteristics about companies that help you decide if they're good investments. And the things are, especially for small biotech companies, CEO will tell you everything is great, right? But is the CEO buying stock in his company? If it's not good enough for him or her to buy stock, it's not good enough for you. And go look at our Form 4s. I bought over $2 million worth of stock. Our insiders, our board members, our management have all been buying stock. Other things, are they getting funding from credible agencies like the Department of Defense and National Cancer Institute funding those programs? The answer to us is yes, that's more credibility. Are they doing their clinical trials with the top hospitals in the country? A lot of small biotech companies, despite the CEO saying they've got the greatest thing in the world, they're doing their clinical trials in Asia or China or Latin America, places like that, where they can do quick and dirty without all the rigors needed for FDA approval. We're not. We're doing our trials at the Cleveland Clinic, which is probably the best hospital in the world. Moffitt Cancer Center, which is one of the top 10 cancer centers out of the 3,500 centers in the country that treat cancer. So these are some characteristics you can look at for early stage. Once you start generating revenue and you start showing growth in revenue, then that's great. Or once you establish a partnership with a big pharmaceutical company that's writing you big checks to have access to your product, that's great. But if you're investing in early stage biotech companies, you typically don't have products on the market. You're still in development. And so who's the best person to assess whether those products are positive, doing well and have great scope? It's the insiders. It's the CEO. If the CEO is not buying stock, I don't touch it, because if it's not good enough for him or her, it's not good enough for me. But if the CEO is buying hand over fist, then that's the stock you should go into if you're interested in that
I,
sector.
I have to tell you, it's not just biotech. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
Yes. I have never, ever had any CEO ever come up to me and say, Tim, we are a really crappy company. We are going to dilute the shareholders until their eyeballs bleed. And, we're going to probably change directions 20, 30 times before we finally just wind up filing BK. No one is ever, I don't care what industry it's in, everybody has an incredible story, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's so one of the things with investing with me is there is a gut feeling. There is and that is something I get from, the CEO or the people leading the charge, right? It's that it's not just the CEO, it's the whole team. It's right. I mean, you can tell those that are there for they have a passion about solving something, right? So one of the things that has become one of the themes that is really, really important to me is it has to be a need and not just a want, right? It has to be something that is if it saves lives, if it makes the job site safer, if it makes us more efficient, those things I think are we have a lot. Humanity has a lot of problems, and there are companies out there that I certainly do not have the intelligence or the tools to solve all these problems. But I guarantee you, if you look, you will find somebody out there that is trying to solve big problems. And there are small companies that people do not know about that have not just, I mean, they have solved them. They have solved that, they could save the country billions of dollars, and they could make, reduce greenhouse gases, so many different very companies. It's just like, and nobody knows about them because they're small. The funds don't pay attention to them because they're too big. They can't even look at these guys, right? And I've watched these companies now for the last 3 years navigate a pandemic, a horrible supply chain issue that was historic in nature, and then the fastest interest rate hike cycle,
yeah,
historic in nature. And these companies have managed to navigate that and not just survive, but grow their business,
yeah.
right? And how have they been rewarded? Their stock is down 70 to 90%, right? And that's critical because that impacts the financing, right?
That's right.
Even though they have executed extremely well, they can't get financing. I shouldn't say that. They can get financing. It's just at horrendous terms,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah,
That will kill you, kill the company. And it kills me because I'm sitting here listening to you say, this was a technology that has been around like 20 years, right? Isn't that what you said?
that's correct.
So even when you build it, like, let's say you're passionate about solving this problem and you have it, you're like right there, but for whatever reason, it wound up getting shelved, right? And I don't know what that reason was, but the answer is there. And for whatever reason, it didn't get adopted and it sat on the shelf for 20 years. And thank God you read about it and it came back off the shelf, right? Because now maybe this really goes somewhere and you wind up making quality of life for all women.
Yeah,
Never having to worry about breast cancer would be I would say that would be a big deal, right? So I see this stuff, and there are companies out there that have solved big problems, but unfortunately, humanity, we're horrible at being early adopters, right? We 13%, and I think that's a very high number of us are supposedly early adopters. And
just as bad. I mean, I'm probably not a great early adopter for tech and stuff like that, but we need that to change, because if we do start adopting things early and just testing these things, but we don't like change. That's the problem. Human beings don't like change. I
Yeah.
guess in healthcare, though, if you're saying that you have something that is going to take away that risk of breast cancer, I would think there would be a lot, people would be willing to adopt that much easier than some of these other things, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, the regulatory environment doesn't allow anyone to adopt it, at least from a use standpoint, until we get the approvals. So in order to get the approvals, you got to get the money to be able to run the company and do all the trials and so forth. So it's you know, it's a cycle. I think the important thing is, and now I'm talking to investors, you know, is if you're interested in investing in early stage biotech companies, look for the characteristics I noted, you know, insider buying, credibility from outside funding sources, clean capital structure, things like that. Low cash burn. You know, we raised, last time we raised money, you know, the only one time in my regime since I've taken over is several years ago, and we've not had to raise money since, because we've been very careful with and very frugal with our money. And so those are the things you should look at. Now,
How many shares do you have outstanding, fully diluted?
32 million shares outstanding,
How many?
32 million,
32 million.
zero warrants, no preferred stock, no debt.
No ratchets, no any of that stuff.
None of that stuff. Stayed away from everything. And so we're in pretty good shape there. And we've got 3 years of cash on the balance sheet. So we're pretty good shape there. So, you know, all in all, everything is going well. We've navigated the pandemic and the supply chain, the poor stock market. And so getting back to my original premise, you know, I'm a CEO. I want to do great things for society, create these products that will eventually impact patients. But because I'm a CEO, I also have to look out for shareholder return. And so I'm always looking out for that as well. And if you're an investor and you want to invest in, you know, the Magnificent Seven, and you've done that and you've made a lot of money, that's fantastic. But if you do decide you want a sliver of your portfolio in high risk companies that could be 10, 20, 100 baggers, then those are companies like mine. But then how do you determine out of the thousands of companies like mine that you choose to invest in? And the way you determine it is not what the CEO says. The way you determine it is what the CEO does. If he's buying his stock, then you buy it. If he's not buying his stock, then, you know, her stock, why would you, right?
I think I want to expand upon that comment, because there are some pretty smart guys out there that will buy shares. Let's just say I've learned just about every trick there is in the book over 38 years. Okay. When you have somebody that is buying shares, yes, that's a very good sign. And I'm not just talking about a token buy. They go buy 1,000 shares, and I'm saying that, you know, they're building a position over time. They're not selling any shares except for those that are going to pay for their, you know, taxes.
Yeah.
But yes, you want to look for a CEO that is buying shares, but more importantly, you also want to see a CEO that does what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
You want to see that they execute. To me, it's a matter of building trust, and that takes time, right? I mean, like you said, everybody's got a great story. You meet, you listen, and then it's a matter of, okay, what did they say they were going to do? And that's not to say that extenuating circumstances can't come up that change things but ultimately they still get done what it may be a different time frame, but they still get done what they said they were going to do. That's what matters, right? So it's what is the CEO doing? What is the CEO saying? And what is what are they executing on? And I am not one of those guys that will sit in an earnings call and harp on somebody about why they didn't get something done in the last quarter. It's a waste of time, right? There's all kinds of reasons. Running a business is hard. It's very, very hard. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances. So you have to be, I would say, flexible with that. But definitely, if someone is stepping up, buying shares, the capital structure, what you said in the Department of Defense, you're looking for these things to not have to go to the capital markets and have to do a terrible financing deal, right? And that to me was very impressive, and that's why we're here today. I mean, I think there are a lot of incredible things about this story that investors should take a hard look at. It is an early. How big of the TAM? Just out of curiosity, I mean, how big of a TAM are we talking here?
Well, for the breast cancer vaccine, if you think about every woman in the world, that's about 4 billion women.
Yeah.
And so, now, you have to think about it. There are a lot of places in the world where women don't worry about breast cancer. They worry about the next meal for their child and things like that. But, just even in the Western developed world, the TAM is massive. So,
that's just the breast cancer.
Yeah, and ovarian cancer and other cancers, the market is massive for all of these programs. So, it's almost ridiculous to try and put a number on it.
Right. I don't even know if you can. It's a big number. Question for you: is there? And this may be too early because I know that a lot of the big pharmas now. It used to be that if you had positive data, they try to scoop you up, right away.
And that's what happen. That's what'll happen here. Our intent is not to build out a lot of infrastructure to manufacture, sell, distribute, market, all of those things. Pharma has the infrastructure to do that. For products like this, like the breast cancer vaccine, for example, to try and market it and distribute it throughout the world or even just in the United States is a massive undertaking. We would much rather Pfizer or Merck or partner like that do that for us, and we take share. It's kind of like the COVID vaccine that Pfizer sold. It's called the Pfizer vaccine, but it was developed by a company called BioNTech, and Pfizer partnered with them to be the commercialization partner. And so that's what we anticipate will happen with our products as well. We want to do the innovation and then lean on them to do the commercialization, and we will do a revenue share.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I've noticed, and maybe you can clarify or agree or not agree, but a lot of times the pharmacies, the big pharmas, they used to buy them like, phase 2 clinical data. Now it seems as though to me they're willing to wait to get the NDA, right?
But part of that has to do with the environment right now. I think the environment is changing. Pharma is hitting a lot of what we call patent cliffs. There are products that are sorry, I keep getting these calls. I'm actually running late for a call, so
all right. Oh, sorry. We'll get you wrapped up here.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, pharma is facing a lot of patent cliffs where their products are going off patent and becoming generic, and so the prices are going to drop dramatically. And so they're looking for things that are first near term, as well as things that could be massive home runs. And so the near term, we've got this CAR-T in the ovarian cancer, and the massive home run is the breast cancer, which is like every woman in the world. So
okay. All right, Amit, I know you're a busy man. I want to thank you very much for coming in. I highly recommend you go to IR investor relations page on Anixa. It's right there up on the screen. Sign up just sign up to get their email alerts on what they have going on. Pay attention to this company. Technically, it's actually setting up interestingly as well. And I'm not telling anybody to buy it. That's not what I do. What I'm saying is this is a very important company that could do amazing things for humanity. And this company could use some support and some, you can be supporter. Not, you don't have to buy the stock. You can also just let people know, make people aware of the company, right? Be a brand ambassador. So there's a lot of ways that you can help the company. I think this is, and Amit, I think you're a stand-up guy, man. I think you're a really good guy, and I'm pulling for you. So I would like to have you back maybe after we get the data that's coming out, right?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And Tim, thank you for having me. And I also want to let people know that if you're out there, you're a physician, you're a scientist, and you want to learn more and get into the weeds on the science, I'm happy to do that. If you're interested in breast cancer or ovarian cancer, or if you're just interested in talking about things that we're doing, feel free to call me. It may take me a few days to call you back, but I'm happy to talk to people about all the things that we're doing.
Perfect. All right, Amit. Well, I can't wait to have you back. Thank you for coming in. Hold on one second. I'm going to turn this off. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Amit Kumar, CEO of Anixa Biosciences, Inc. Ticker symbol ANIX. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, please do us a favor and give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.